Hey everyone, I wanted to make another short video just to talk about something that just happened to me with this knife. If you follow me on Instagram, you saw where I was asking for a little bit of audience participation about what handle material to use on this knife, and by far the winner was the wenge wood. And not on this blade, but on the next blade that I make, which will be after this pattern. The wenge wood will be what I use. So that was by far, in a way, the winner of that little audience participation post. But I wanted to talk about the failure that just happened with this knife. This knife just warped, wiggled, and cracked in the quench really, really bad. And I wanted to talk about a few lessons that I learned from this. And these are lessons that I've learned in the past, and these are things that I know. But that's one of the reasons I wanted to make this video, was to just kind of explain that even when you know sometimes things not to do in the bladesmith shop, you might wind up doing them again. So it's good to kind of revisit these lessons from time to time for me, and so I'm thinking maybe it might be good to revisit this for some of you guys. But anyway, lesson number one is obviously don't grind too thin before the heat treat. And so with this blade, my excuse for that happening is that I got a new 12-inch contact wheel, and I got carried away with the hollow grind on this. I haven't done a whole lot of hollow grinding in the past, and it was really going very well, and I was so excited by how the hollow grind was going on this that I took it too far. And by taking it way too far, I mean, I knew when I finished that going into a quench with this thin of an edge was probably not going to be good. But I decided to try it anyway, and sure enough, it failed. So anyway, yeah, lesson number one is, like Jay Nielsen says, I think on Forged in Fire several times, forge thick, grind thin. You're much safer in the heat treat that way. I like to leave a good dime or nickel thickness on the edge when I go into heat treat, and had I done that this time, I doubt I would have had this failure. So yeah, that's the first thing, is I just lost focus because I was focused on a new tool or a new toy, and I made a silly mistake by grinding it too thin. Lesson number two is, you know, when you can avoid it, don't use reclaimed, recycled material on a blade that you're going to then invest a lot of time and maybe nice, expensive handle material on, because you just never know with reclaimed material what the prior life of that material did to the steel. And so, you know, if you want to have a higher degree of certainty that your material is worth the time and financial expenditure you're putting into it, start with good material. And I have no shortage of good material, and I'll say this to anybody: good bladesmithing material is not hard to come by. You know, new 5160 spring steel is not incredibly difficult, nor is it expensive to find. If you live anywhere near a populated city, you can probably find a suspension shop that will sell you some cutoff material that's new 5160 spring material. And if not, just, you know, a local steel supplier that can give you a known 5160 or even some other kinds of blade steel for you know, relatively little money. And so again, if you're going to spend time and effort and money on a blade, and you can avoid using the reclaimed material, my idea is, why not? And so I fully admit this time I didn't follow that rule, and so now I paid for it, possibly. I had a piece of steel in my scrap bucket that, dimensionally speaking, was what I thought was a good size bar stock to start with, to make, you know, about this size of a knife. And so I don't know if maybe this crack is the result of not only it being too thin, but there could have been prior stress fractures in this material that I didn't know were there. And so again, I'm reminding myself as much as anybody else, use good material when you can, and I certainly could have this time. So that leads me to another lesson, which is, you know, I went to the scrap bucket to find this piece of material because I remembered that it was dimensionally similar to what I needed, and I wouldn't have to do a whole lot of, I wouldn't have to spend a lot of time on the power hammer or at the bandsaw, you know, getting this to a usable bar stock. And so I thought I'd kind of save time by using that piece of material. And so the time savings there really wound up costing me time in the long run. And so sometimes shortcuts in the bladesmithing shop can wind up causing you to have to start over later, and you wind up spending more time in the end than you would have spent had you just started with good material, or if you had just taken the time in the beginning to do it right. So that's my third lesson is, you know, be mindful of the shortcuts you take, because they could wind up costing you more time than you save in the beginning. And then finally, I think I would just like to say that failure is very much a part of bladesmithing and blacksmithing in general, especially learning. And I don't know anybody that's in this craft that's not still learning, regardless of their skill level. And part of learning is failing. And you know, failure used to bother me a lot more in the bladesmith shop than it does now, but I just accept it, know that it's part of it, and that it's going to happen, and I move on, and I try to remember not to make the same mistakes in the future. So I would just encourage anybody that's thinking about getting into bladesmithing, or that is currently in bladesmithing, maybe a new guy in bladesmithing, and you just ruined a knife, you know, don't quit, don't throw in the towel, because you just learned how not to do something. And so try not to do that again the next time. And so I guess my final bit of advice is to don't fear the failure. It's going to happen to you. And so, you know, I personally, the fact that I don't do it right every time is part of the enjoyment for me. You know, and that may sound odd, but I think if I knew that every time I came out here that I was going to make a perfect piece, and that there were not going to be any mistakes, everything was going to go right from start to finish, I really don't know where the challenge or the fun or the satisfaction would come from out of that. So, you know, just roll with the failures, know that they're going to come, and learn from them. So I hope this video helps someone. I hope that it encourages someone, and maybe it helps prevent someone from making the same kind of mistakes. So this knife is a piece of junk now. It's got my maker's mark on it, so I'm not letting it leave my shop because it's questionable. This is going to go into a failure bucket for me to look at and remember, and it will serve me for years as a reminder for what not to do. So anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate you coming to check out the channel. Talk to you later. Bye.